John Eustace has addressed the media for the final time of the EFL Championship season as Derby County face up against Stoke City at Pride Park Stadium on Saturday morning. Now, obviously, we all know the position that John Eustace came in at Derby County, where realistically we've been written off. Everything seemed all said and done, and Derby County have been favourites for relegation pretty much the entire time since. Now, obviously, results have gone really well for Derby since John Eustace came in, especially in that final 10 games where I think Derby County are currently sat fourth in the form table. Now, Dominic Dietrich of BBC Radio Derby asked his questions, and I'm here to give you my full reaction to each one of them. Now, the first question was about when John Eustace arrived in February and how he felt that it was going to go. And he said that when he came into the club, it felt like they'd been written off a little bit. And obviously, we're now at the point where there's one more huge game to go, and there's been a lot of hard work, a lot of effort behind the scenes from the players, the coaches, and everybody else behind the scenes to get Derby to the position where they're in right now. You obviously look to sort of the last 3 weeks or so where sort of results have been really good, but you obviously then go back to the first 3 weeks of the season under John Eustace, which is obviously around that February period. I think it was 3 defeats in a row: QPR, Millwall, Middlesbrough, all essentially poor games, and not necessarily all of them were poor performances, but certainly weren't the greatest. And then obviously since then, the boys, according to John Eustace, have been great and have been a pleasure to work with, and that sort of gave him and his coaching staff hope that they'd pick up points, they'd pick up victories, and obviously that is exactly what has happened to Derby County over the course of the time period since those first few weeks, where it obviously didn't quite go to plan. Now, he was asked a lot in this interview about like the coaches, the expectations and the players and things like that. And he said for a lot of it that it's been a massive group effort between the coaches and the players to be able to get into this position. And if he looks at sort of the coaches that he's brought with him and the players that he's got available as well, there's a lot of experience and a lot of them know how to do their roles. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's also keen to point out that there is a lot of players within this squad and maybe even within the backroom staff who haven't been in this position before. You look at yes, Liam Thompson was part of the Derby County squad that got relegated, but ultimately has never been in this position heading into the final day where we can seal safety. You look at Harrison Armstrong, a new face in the group, and a lot of these players have never been at Derby County before. So yes, they all know how to play football. The coaches know exactly what they're doing as well, and I think they've been excellent under John Eustace, and I think John Eustace had a brilliant group around him. Now, he was asked a question about whether the conversations with his coaches and with the players have been sort of the same since day one, or how they've potentially adapted since then. And his sort of point of view was that everything has been the same. It's always been sort of with the same goal in mind. Nothing has really changed from that first day. And he says there was a lot of initial positives which he found when he came into the club, whether it be in training and even in those early games. Even though Derby County weren't picking up the results, he felt that the players showed that they were very coachable and were willing to listen to their ideas and things like that, and that is obviously what has led Derby County into this position now. He was asked about previous job roles: Birmingham, Blackburn, obviously Kidderminster Harriers as well, and obviously spent a little bit of time at QPR, if I remember correctly. And he said that each job has its highs and lows, but it's really important, especially in this division, that you keep level-headed and you don't get carried away with the results you're picking up, otherwise you'll end up in trouble. And in my opinion, I think that's maybe what happened to Derby County earlier in the season. Obviously, had a brilliant start. I think it was 12 points in the first 10 games. Derby County was sitting, I think it was 7th place at one point, just a point outside the playoff positions, and then it all sort of went to poo. And in my opinion, I sort of feel like that was a lot of complacency that came from the former management structure and things like that, and then they didn't really know how to turn it around, and then obviously started picking up a lot of injuries. And John Eustace didn't ever mention that, but I thought it was keen to sort of mention that. That's sort of my opinion about sort of earlier on in the season. You then look at sort of how those roles have helped him develop into the position he's in now and how he's able to keep so level-headed. He was asked a question about his sort of feelings, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, but he then obviously spoke about previous managers worked under, and he says that he's learned a lot from those previous managers, was managed by a lot of great managers, and they've all helped him get to this point today where he's able to be the manager of this football club in such a massive game and show off what he's done at the likes of Birmingham, the likes of Blackburn over the course of the last few years. And obviously the hope is that he can go on to do this with Derby County. Now, he was then asked a question about Matt Gardner, a coach who's been with him since his time at Kidderminster Harriers, and John Eustace says that he's had a massive role to play in his coaching career and has helped him a great deal from when he first stepped in at Kidderminster to sort of where he is now. And Matt Gardner dedicated to his job, and John Eustace loves having him around. And as much as they're really good for each other, it's not sort of set in stone that they calm each other down or heighten each other's emotions in certain periods, and they each have their own ways of dealing with things and going through certain processes, and he feels that's one of the reasons why they work so well together. Now, Leigh Bromby was obviously brought up by Dom Dietrich of BBC Radio Derby, obviously the guy who's recently been brought in as the interim recruitment lead. I spoke about him a couple of videos ago, and Eustace was keen to talk about the experience in his previous roles, especially at Huddersfield, where he believes that Leigh Bromby did a really, really good job. And Eustace says that the main focus for him really is getting the right targets to help make the team better, whether that be League One, Championship, whatever the division, whatever the budgets. He wants to make sure that whoever that person is knows exactly what they're looking for, how they're going to find them, and how it's all going to work. And I do think that he's obviously sort of said all the right things, really. It's exactly what I said the other day. I don't necessarily think, yes, it's an interim basis, but I do believe that if he does a good job in this first window, probably be turned into a more permanent role. And obviously he says that the football experience is key within the board. Obviously leagues and budgets will be sort of key to how successful the partnership is going forward, whether it be bringing in young players, bringing in more experienced players. And Eustace was asked a question about whether he was consulted on this appointment, which Eustace says he was in the room. Obviously, board members were consulted and a couple of other people as well. But he did have his say to put forward, and he was allowed to do that. And obviously, I think I'm not going to say that obviously rules the report on Patrick Deboys to be 100% correct, but obviously it was reported a few weeks ago that Eustace essentially shut down that potential deal. So obviously in this conversation you could probably argue that that is okay. Leigh Bromby and John have already had brief conversations, and the main sort of thing is focusing on Saturday and moving forward from Saturday, because obviously if Derby County aren't in the Championship, there's no point talking about Championship targets yesterday. If Derby County are in the Championship, there's no point talking potential League One targets. So there's sort of that massive keen focus between John and Leigh Bromby that they focus on Saturday, get through the game and then move forward. Now, it did then actually move on to the game against Stoke, where obviously John Eustace said sort of the normal sort of things, that it's a massive game against a really good team, a really good manager, a really experienced manager as well in Mark Robbins, and it's a tough challenge for Derby County. It's a tough challenge for John Eustace, as we obviously look for a potential moment of relief, which was then asked by Dom Dietrich. And the main aim really is that we see commitment from the players. That's what John Eustace had to say, to sort of keep the fans going and sort of keep them moving forward. And he believes that the fans, players, coaches, etc. have all been magnificent since he came in, and sort of he just wants to keep that going into this weekend to make sure that we come out with a positive result. Now, obviously, Championship football is absolutely massive for next season, as John Eustace confirmed, and it's obviously where the club want to be, but the most important thing is getting through these next few days and being in a positive position coming out of the weekend, and whether that be with a win, a draw, whatever, the main aim is staying in the division. Now, there is no latest injury news. Really, Sondre Langas, as anticipated, seems to be okay for the final hurdle, but it's continuing to be monitored daily. We'll get into the other players in another video tomorrow morning. He was asked a few other questions by a different journalist. I'm not entirely sure who it was. I'll probably take a guess and say that it's Lee Curtis. Again, asked about like the first few weeks in the job, and he says that John Eustace said that it was difficult at first, but he saw that how the squad sort of worked together and stayed together and worked hard to sort of try and find a rhythm was what gave him sort of the positive mindset that he could turn it around. And obviously it felt like because of that, it was like a breath of fresh air and sort of helped him be able to coach the players, and he knew that they were going to fight going into every single game. As I mentioned earlier, he was asked about his feelings heading into this weekend's fixture, where he says he is nervous and anxious as any human would be in this position, but this is his job, and he likes to believe and likes to portray the fact that he's in control of the situation, and he does believe that his squad of players, his coaches, the press, like Dom Dietrich, Lee Curtis, Aaron Bradley, whoever it is, should see that as well and should feel that. And I do believe that that is sort of the process that we're given by John Eustace. Now, realistically, he turned around and said, essentially, it's a must-win game no matter what. It's not a case of we have to win to stay up or whatever. It's just a case of he will never prepare a team to lose. He'll never prepare a team to draw. The main aim is to be competitive and work hard and fight against the opposition to be able to pick up whatever points are necessary at the weekend, and that's what he aims for on Saturday. He was asked a question about sort of some of the players who were involved in last season's final day. Obviously, Derby County winning 2-0 against Carlisle to secure their promotion to the Championship. But he says it's irrelevant to him. Obviously, he had nothing to do with it, had no role in it. He doesn't know how it was dealt with and things like that. He has his own ways of doing things. And obviously, we can look back to last year with Blackburn Rovers. Obviously, they won on the final day last year to keep themselves up. And the most important thing, he says, is to stay level-headed. Now, focus has always been there since John Eustace came in, but more importantly, it's been there this week. Was asked about a quick start, to which he says that obviously it's key to a potential victory, but the main aim is to be positive, do our best to stay in the division. There is a couple of different game plans which he could be set to utilise, whether Derby County, other results go their way elsewhere and whatnot. So it's really important that the Derby County fans not only not necessarily stay across it, but you've got to stay with the team. Whatever's happening elsewhere, just know that John Eustace has a plan. Now, obviously, you can let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We spoke a lot about Derby County versus Stoke City this week. It's a massive, massive fixture for Derby. It's a massive fixture for the club, for the fan base, for everything. And 3 points would secure us in the division no matter what. So let's put our fingers, let's cross them, and let's hope that we'll be celebrating on this time on Saturday afternoon. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit the like button as well, and I'll catch you in my next video.